Steve is a forward-thinking financial leader with a distinguished career across private equity, hedge funds, and investment banking. Steve has been recognized for his ability to navigate complex landscapes and deliver significant transformation. As CEO and co-founder of RYT, he's driven by vision to monetize financial ecosystems, facilitating the integration of traditional and decentralized finance, while prioritizing transparency, accessibility, and resilience. You're in a good industry, my friend.
Yeah, whoever wrote that intro for me, I got to give him some props. It makes me sound a lot smarter than I probably am. So I think my PR team did a great job.
No, I'm sure you've got a lot of wisdom, which we're going to unpack. So first and foremost, let's talk about your company, what you do.
Yeah, we built a layer one blockchain. Well, maybe it'd be helpful if I gave like a quick background on kind of who I am, because that would kind of help build up to,
Of course.
what we're doing and why we're doing it and the company itself. Um, I spent my career in financial services, as you mentioned. So I've sort of seen the industry from the inside out. And so I saw a lot of friction, cost inefficiencies that still exist throughout kind of a wide range of financial services that's really kind of under the surface. So, as a whole, the system works, I think, pretty well, but it certainly works for institutions first and people second. So, when the blockchain movement started to come along, I was following it for a long time. I never really was interested in it from as a speculative asset from an investor's perspective, which, in hindsight, I regret. I probably would be retired by now if I jumped on the bandwagon very early. But what I was interested was from the infrastructure perspective. So um, I saw this as a good way to address those things I mentioned before: the friction, the cost, the inefficiencies. So it was really a way for us to kind of solve those problems. So I wanted to build with my co-founders a company that is from the ground up addressing those. So it's not a project built on existing broken architecture where you're kind of building from an unstable or poor foundation, which is you're never going to get a stable product then. So the only way to do that is through a layer one blockchain. So Right is a layer one blockchain, which we've designed all the security, the governance, the performance, the compliance, the control, all to
Mm.
address those issues that we've seen in the market. So in short, kind of that's what Right is, um, layer one blockchain. But I think kind of the demographics and the partners that we're targeting is what really sets us apart.
Super interesting. I want to kind of just take one more step back. And you mentioned that if you had gone into the blockchain industry or the crypto industry a little earlier, you'd be a very rich man. And I hear that all the time. But it's always like hindsight is 2020, which I get.
Of course, yeah.
But replay those exact moments when the industry was at its infancy. It takes a certain type of character to want to dive into something that early. Like genuinely, of course, you're like, hey, if I would have known Bitcoin would be what it is today, I would have put my net worth in there and I would be a very different person today. But think of something, putting your net worth in something that the idea really hasn't formed. It's volatile where it dips 80, 90%. Think of like buying at the bottom of one of those dips where, everyone's saying crypto, Bitcoin is a scam. It goes down 90, 80%. And then you're saying, hey, now is the time to put in my net worth.
Totally agree with you. I mean, I was sort of saying it as a flip comment, as a half joke, but the idea that you're going to put your money in very early and then have something go from $100 to $10,000 and you don't sell, and then it goes down to $5,000 and you still don't sell, and then it goes to $35,000 and you still don't sell, like that's very unlikely. I mean, replaying it back in my head, sure, of course I wish I invested, but like I don't think I made bad decisions. I mean, I was busy doing other
Yeah.
stuff that I thought was productive and value added, and I think ultimately it's put me in a great spot. But everybody likes to go to the casino and put everything on black, right? It's just you're talking about your net worth, you're talking about real money. It's not even a 50-50 chance with a lot of these
Right.
crypto opportunities. It's like 1 in 1,000.
Right. Right. Steve, well, I only say that because if we take that mindset and we extrapolate it to today, I mean, it's a similar struggle we all have, right? Where it's like we're still truly at the infancy of this industry. I mean, the big corporations and the smart money is finally starting to like encroach at the front door here. And I mean, I think like less than 1% of people have Bitcoin. A fraction of that even have one Bitcoin. So that's still a mentality that that's the argument we're going to make in 10, 15 years from now. It's like, oh, if only I had gotten in today, you know? And I wonder how we get out of that loop. There's a little more sense of security. And this kind of segues into what is making the industry more secure today. Regulations, the Clarity Act, stable coins.
I think what you're touching on is really an industry that's growing up. I think that a lot of people were investing in cryptos and they're using like these metrics to decide whether to invest in a token, and it's based on number of Telegram followers, or it's based on TVL, or all these metrics that don't really speak to like the underlying value of the business or what the company's actually trying to accomplish. And I think you're seeing that kind of change over time. You're seeing real businesses with real revenue streams, with real profitability, kind of that are blockchain based. And I think people are starting to move into the category that are professional investors that are, when I say professional, I mean institutional investors. They're getting less afraid of scams because I think the industry was, obviously fraught with those pump and
Yeah,
dumps or just plain out fraud and theft. I think you're seeing
yeah,
they still exist, but there's certainly less of them. I think regulation is a very good thing. I think early crypto people, were very against regulation, probably very for complete decentralization. I think ultimately where we're going to end up is a better place that has some regulation, that has some government involvement, that has some institutional involvement, that has some restrictions on what you can do, but that also makes people comfortable, and it feels like it's a safe environment to participate. So
right.
going to open it up to like a much much wider audience of investors and consumers and businesses.
Yeah. I think the emergence of this industry makes me realize that people truly choose comfort over logic. A lot of these new systems we're creating are better by any metric. I mean, if you look at something like even like XRP, forget about all the politics behind it, but just the conceptually, it's faster, less fees. There's zero arguments to make to say, hey, I prefer the traditional system. Yet it's really hard to move off traditional structures because we're just comfortable and we found something that kind of works and we stick to it. And sometimes something like as simple as when you go to a bar and you want to get a drink and you need to show the bouncer your ID, you're showing them like all these sensitive information like your address. All he needs to know is that you're allowed to enter the bar because you're of right of drinking age.
Right.
And and that's been normalized where we're just exposing way more information than we need. And this whole idea of like being able to prove your identity or to give over the least amount of information to authenticate is going to really just change how we view authentication in general. And is that one of like your guiding factors? And how is this all playing out with what you're doing? And who are you working with to push these ideas forward?
Yeah, so that's a big question, but I think that identity really forms the foundation for virtually all services when you kind of come when it comes down to it, right? If you need healthcare, you need to prove who you are. If you need to move money, you need to prove who you are. Any sort of government service requires them to know who you are. So whatever that welfare, driver's license, passport. So it all revolves around the digital identity, or maybe right now it's not digital identity. So moving that into a blockchain environment, it seems like probably one of the most obvious and natural places for blockchain to thrive. I think probably remittance is right up there as number two or maybe number one, but identity and remittance are probably the top two cases I can think of. Um, so yeah, I think that's probably our biggest focus initially. The way we're going about it is that we have, rather than try to create a blockchain and then find a bunch of investors and then try to win some customers, is we've kind of gone the reverse route. We've gone to
Hmm.
governments and said, look, we understand your systems aren't great. Um, it's pretty widely known that a lot of these countries that we're speaking with have big issues with fraud, big issues with people not having identity. I'm talking about a lot of developing countries, like we're working with Pakistan, Costa Rica,
Hmm.
Panama. So it's not a certainty that people even have a government issued ID.
Hmm.
So we've gone and said, look, what do you need? They said we need something, reliable. We need something that's safe and secure and that's fast enough. They don't say, they're not buying technology. They're buying reliability, security, and stability. And they're probably buying stuff that they are sure that they're not going to be voted out of office next time the term comes up. So they need it to work. So we built our product around that. And the reason that we want to work with governments is because it basically gives us a guaranteed path to deployment. So, Pakistan, for example, has close to 260 million people, maybe even a little more than that. But the idea that a startup like Right is going to go out into the world and try to win 260 million customers and push them onto an ID platform we built is virtually impossible without, an absolutely enormous war chest. But through partnering with governments like Pakistan, getting their trust, going through pilot programs, taking time to develop those pilot programs properly, we can access those populations and bring them onto our platform with virtual certainty because it'll be a government mandated solution.
Hmm. But okay, so you're really going for the government, which is this bureaucratic structure, and to make any change is probably an uphill battle. Why haven't you started with smaller companies so you can build out your infrastructure, you can stress test it, you can kind of hash out all the kinks, and then when you're slowly inching your way upwards, that's when you would have an easier time closing those bigger entities.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you're dealing with identification, it's hard not to be working with the government because the identification is generally a government issued document. Um, we've been fortunate enough to have some, good connections with some of these governments. So we've been able to have candid conversations. And it's not been so much us in a room pitching them, it's been them pitching us on what they need.
Right.
So we're being reactive to what they want, which I think is very, very helpful. So we're not really fighting an uphill battle.
Mm,
It's more of a collaboration where we're designing the protocol around their needs. And when you're doing a government program, it's a big deal, right? They're not going to rip the band-aid off and all of a sudden the country's on blockchain. That's obviously not going to happen. So we are going to start with smaller pilot programs. We're starting with the program probably within the next 3 months. That'll bring 20,000 people a day onto the chain. We're not bringing 260 million people, but it's not 10 people. So we're doing these pilots that are going to prove out the platform just like you would do with a small company, but it's in a constrained environment. So it works very much the same way. So they get all the benefits. It's not going to black out a country if something bad happens. But you do get to see how it works. So you get to stress test
mm,
it. And you get a lot of those benefits you would if you just try to start with a small company as you do with a small pilot program.
right. So when you make the simple case to them, hey, this is outperforms your old system by pretty much every standard. What are the kind of pushback you're getting from big governments like Pakistan to like, why is it not like, let's throw the kitchen sink at this and get this done yesterday?
Because I don't think it's really just a technology solution that you're selling. There's every blockchain is going to be more efficient than
The one
almost
before it.
every government run
Oh
platform. I
yeah.
mean, if you've been to the DMV, I mean, I spent 4 hours a month ago trying to get my passport for a trip I had to do to Singapore, and I was just standing in line, going home, waiting, coming back, standing in line.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
It's
Um,
it's a horrible place to be when you're too big to fail and nothing like
yeah,
you don't.
yeah, and so I don't think it's really just a technological challenge. It's more about being like grown-ups in the room. So me and my co-founders have all been in business for 20, 30 plus years. So we understand how to deal with compliance. We understand how to deal with regulation. We understand how to follow rules. So I think those things are a lot harder to learn and to be, up to speed on than just a coder in a room building a better
Right.
mousetrap. So I think the trust factor is something that's hard to earn. Um, it probably requires some gray hairs. Thankfully, I've got those, and it's one of my partners. But I think that's a big part of it. Like I said, kind of at the outset, like they're not just buying technology; they're buying security, reliability, and trust.
Right. That makes sense. How long have you how long has the company, right, been running for?
Well, Right as a company has been around for a couple years now, but me and my co-founders have been working in the blockchain space in a variety of ways for probably about 8 years,
Nice.
looking at different platforms, kind of playing around with different technologies. Um, as we got more and more interest from the government, we said, look, this is something we should really focus on. Originally, we weren't focused on a layer one that could do lots of different things. We were just focused on, one channel, like remittances. And it's a very big channel. But as we sort of learned the opportunity, we sort of pivoted and said, like, why don't we build this to be a layer one blockchain that solves some of these bigger problems and then can be
Yeah.
leveraged for a wide range of applications rather than just one vertical.
Yeah, but I can only imagine if you were doing this for years now that you were operating in the Wild West. And was it like where you were building the idea as things were starting to form in terms of regulations and clarity, and you were just had this like trust that it's all going to start to fall together at some point where you're like, I don't even know if this is going to go anywhere because there's no real clear direction yet. The industry is still
Yeah,
forming and
I
regulations
mean,
aren't there.
I don't know if I ever thought that it wasn't going to go anywhere. I thought, like, when the hell is it going to happen? like,
Right,
uh,
right.
I knew that we'd eventually get there, but it felt like a lot of two steps forward, one step back. I mean, you have a lot of momentum, and then you have like some massive fraud being exposed, or you have some political winds shift, and it feels like you're taking steps
Mm,
back. I mean, how many times have we seen like the crypto market on a rocket ship and then just collapse all of a sudden and then sort of
yeah.
get back to where it was? So I never really lost faith. I think, to be honest, the time was well served for us because when you're working with these governments, they're just slow. I don't think there's really any way around that. You're dealing with a lot of people, and in the government, I think there's a bit of a misalignment of interest because a lot of these projects that they're working on, if they get approved during their term, likely the benefits don't accrue till well after they're in
Exactly.
office.
Exactly.
But if things go badly, they go badly usually pretty quickly. And so there's this, it takes a bit of a confident, forward thinking leader to be willing to pursue something like this. And
Yeah.
I think it took us honestly years to gain that trust. And now that they've seen us many times, we've had many conversations, we've done always
Mm.
what we've said we were going to do. We've proved to them with our technology. We've met with their technologists. It's a process that was many years in the making. It's kind of it is what it is when you're dealing with the government. So I don't know if we could have made things move faster. I mean, if you had given me $50 million 5 years ago, would my company be that much farther along? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But
Yeah. What external event would need to catalyze for things to move forward? It's all about framing it, it sounds like. And you're 100% right. I mean, just stuff at the political sphere moves slowly. People want to mitigate liability. People focus on their term. They're focused on getting reelected. They're not thinking 20, 30 years from now. And by the way, that's not even necessarily a political sphere angle. That's just a broader reflection of human behavior, right? We tend to worry about today more than tomorrow. It's all about framing. So there must be some way where it's almost going to become a liability for them to start to hang on to these archaic structures. I wonder what would catalyze the process where it's just
well,
like things.
I can tell you in one, I'm not really at liberty to talk about the details, but we are dealing with one government who has been receiving a lot more cybersecurity attacks over the last, let's call it 6 months to a year. Um,
I can probably guess who you're talking about.
there's probably more than one, but Web3 is a great way to thwart a lot of these attacks that are, pretty antiquated with what they're doing. I mean, you're always
Mm,
gonna there's always phishing attacks where you're gonna get someone to give you your password or something stupid like that.
yeah,
But if you've got a blockchain with an auditable trail that shows every transaction and it's immutable, that solves a lot of problems. It also solves a lot of problems of fraud within the system.
right.
Um, I mean, basic things like delivering funds to poor immigrants or poor people from a government that get lost along the way. I mean, there's some countries where they'll give out $100 and $10 gets to the recipient because of all the leakage along the way.
Right.
That can go away immediately. I mean, it can be delivered
Yeah.
right into their digital wallet, proven that it's recorded, and that whole network of losses is gone. So I think things like that are becoming more at the forefront of people's understanding of the
Mm,
benefits. And like you said, there's only so long people can hold on to these old technologies. There's not that many people that benefit from them, I think, that are sitting in government. There's a whole lot of people that are benefiting from them, like, stealing from them that probably don't want to see this change. But
the
I think,
irony of that point is that, the argument is crypto is used for money laundering, and it's like it's the exact opposite. It's
yeah, well, money laundering has been around forever, and people
yeah,
do it way more off chain than they do it on chain. Um, and it's, every time there's some sort of breach of security related to blockchain, it's like front page news. But the amount of money that gets lost through crypto is like a tiny fraction of the money that
right.
gets lost through traditional channels.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Steve, so if you were to imagine what the industry is going to be like in 5 years from now for Right, how do you see the company unfolding over the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the next few years are going to be really exciting for us. I think we're actually. I was talking to one of my co-founders this morning about it. We actually have an abundance of opportunities here, which is a very good problem to have, but it's still a problem nonetheless because you really need to scale up your staffing, your developers. But we've definitely hit this inflection point of interest from multiple governments that are, inbound calls. Sort of the word's gotten out, I think, among the regulators and the governments of what we're doing. Um, so I think it's going to be a very exciting time. I think it's going to be a challenging time. I think, anytime you're talking about rolling out to population scale, number of people, you're going to have unforeseen challenges and problems, and we're going to have to deal with those as they come. But it's exciting. I mean, to think that in 5 years, it's a very realistic goal to have a few 100,000 or a few 100 million people using Wright's blockchain is like a mind-boggling thing to think about. And I think what's
Mhm.
really interesting is, I think in a real success mode where blockchain has really kind of become a real infrastructure provider, is that most of those people won't even know they're on blockchain. I think it's going to become an
Right,
invisible service like using your cell phone. No one cares about how the phone
exactly.
works. So
No one
they're not.
cares about TCP/IP or email protocols. They send an email. They just does it
Yeah,
do I does he get it or not? That's all they care about.
yeah, I think actually the real sign that blockchain has become a success is when people stop talking about it and
Mm,
it's just become a service as like any other.
interesting point. That's a brilliant point. Steve, how can people get in touch with you?
I think probably that you can follow me on LinkedIn is probably one of the best ways. We've got a website up, right.io, ryt.io, which will be updated actually in about a month. So, but you can still find some information on there. You can also follow us on Twitter or X, I guess now. Um, we provide updates on the business on both those platforms, both LinkedIn and X. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or interest in what we're doing.
Steve, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great meeting you.